What is going on? Bitwise guy here, and basically today's video is a little bit impromptu, and I was going to do another completely different Q&A on some other topic, but I'm going to save that for next week because I actually kind of have a more important topic that I want to discuss about programming, which is how do I get a programming job? So this question actually came up because one of the programming groups that I am a part of, someone basically asked a question, and I'm assuming he's a junior, and he's doing his bachelor's degree, I believe, in computer science. I could be wrong, but that's what I garnered from the thread. I'll read out what he said. I won't tell you his name or anything because he probably wants some privacy from the rest of the internet. But he basically says, "I'm so nervous that I'm sick to my stomach. Going in for an initial meeting and to talk to the boss of a local software company about an internship this morning. If all goes well, this will be my first working experience in the field. I feel like I'm an unqualified elementary school child walking into a high school elitist competition. Is it always like this? Someone please talk me off the ledge." So there was quite a big discussion about it. It was really quite interesting. It was between working software developers like myself and people who are still completing their bachelor's degree, and possibly even people who are a bit younger than that. But I want to kind of give my 2 cents on how to get into the industry, and I want to try and sort of debunk some myths about the whole industry. What do you need to get into the industry? Where can you expect to be, and all those kinds of things. So basically, I kind of made the point that I personally had a very different attack vector to come into the industry. What I did was I worked on a free open source software portfolio. And I spent so very many years teaching myself these kinds of things. I came from the background of, I was obsessed with programming. I wanted to know everything about it. I wanted to know how things worked. I wanted to know how computers worked and all those kinds of things. So for me, I had the motivation and the drive to go out, and I kind of just learned it, right? Like it just kind of all fell into place, because the thing is, when you don't have someone holding your hand, you really have to go and learn the next thing, or else you don't progress any further. And if you're driven enough to progress further, well, you've got to go and find the next, you got to go and find the solution to the problem that you're facing. So, the first main topic and main point that I want to address is, and this isn't exactly his question, but do you need a degree? Do you need a bachelor's degree? Do you need a master's degree? Do you need a degree at all to get into computer science? Well, that's kind of a twofold question. It really depends on what you want to do. If you want to go into academia in computer science, then I would absolutely recommend, and I would be very hesitant to kind of recommend anyone try without a degree in computer science. So what I mean by that is, ultimately, if you want to do research in computer science and stuff, and you want to be the kind of person that invents programming languages and all those kinds of things, I would recommend that you go and get a PhD in computer science or a PhD in software engineering. The reason I say that is weirdly twofold, and the first one is kind of not so obvious. But the first one is that when you are doing your PhD and when you are doing your bachelor's, and not so much your bachelor's, but your master's degree, you get this support framework from around you, from people who are kind of purists and puritans who are able to guide you through that very long and tedious and often very expensive process of developing new technology that often, you won't find in the workforce, and a lot of companies will not be, willing to do. The second reason that you might want to get a degree and to get a PhD is, apart from, people might be calling you doctor, I guess it kind of gives the impression that you're willing to stick at things. But I want to go back to on the flip side of this whole debate of, do you need a degree in computer science? The flip side of it is, a bachelor's degree is basically nothing more than a really useless piece of paper. Now, I say that because as someone who is now weirdly in the position of hiring people, my experience has been that people with a bachelor's degree aren't too much more experienced than someone who spent 4 weeks teaching themselves something basic off the internet. Now, that's not always the case. It obviously depends on, the school that they went to and all those kinds of things, but especially where I live in Australia, the education is very subpar. It's very not driven. It's very not kind of geared towards the industry in that we're working in, and so it's very hard to actually employ someone who may have a bachelor's degree but no work experience. So what would I recommend to solve this problem? Well, I would just say that you have to be a very driven and motivated person to go into the programming industry. You need to go at it with the mindset of you're really good at it and it's something you really love. You have a nice portfolio, and in your free time, you should be really going for a programming job if programming is something that you do in your free time and you are successfully completing projects. When you come up with an idea and you're successfully completing projects and you're sharing that code and people like the code that you're producing, and you're able to debug code and you're able to understand, what's going on within a system, then yes, you should be applying. If you want to, then you should be applying for a job. Now, the next question might be, and the most important question I think, which was really the focus of this whole discussion, was how do I approach a programming interview, and what should I say in the interview? What should I be presenting in the interview? What should I have on my resume? All these kinds of things. Like, what am I doing to kind of get into the industry? This is a hot topic. I think that this is something that a lot of people will strongly disagree with me, and a lot of people will strongly agree with me. And I think that's very much to do with the experiences that we've all individually had going in and breaking into the industry. Now, this doesn't so much apply to people who have already broken into the industry. Once you've had 2, 3, 4 successful jobs where you've worked for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, everything else is kind of second class to that. Once you've got that experience under your belt, you've got good referees, you've got good experience, everything else is pretty second class to that. But let's just say you haven't had a single job and you really want to break into the industry. Now, the first thing I should mention, if you want to get into the industry and you don't have any experience, and even if you do or you do not have a bachelor's degree, I would not be applying for very big companies straight away. The reason I say that is big companies have a very strange way of doing intake of new employees. Generally, they pick juniors from internship programs. The reason they do that is that they expect their interns to become career, lifelong members of their organization. So if you're the kind of person that wants to basically, pick, say, IBM, and you want to go and work for IBM for the next 10 or 15 years or however long IBM takes to go bankrupt, I'm just kidding, but so if you want to be that kind of person, then I would recommend an internship pathway for you. I would recommend that you go and you present all of the stuff that you've currently done, and you want to show that you're a motivated person. What you don't want to do is you don't want to suck up. So you don't want to say, please, please, sir, please give me the job, because that just, there's no substance to the reason that they should give you the job. What you want to do is, what I would recommend in a practical sense is, I would recommend creating a GitHub portfolio, and I would recommend putting some really interesting projects on there. Don't put any kind of, don't put any like interview kind of question programming on there. What I mean by that is basically, create things that you want to create. Don't just create things for the sake of creating things. The thing with that is, when you create things that you want to create, you'll actually learn more anyway. So that's it. So create things you want to create and put them in the public, put the code out there, don't keep it all secretive, and open source will get you a long way. The second thing is, when you go into the interview, you need to be you need to be confident in your interviews, in programming especially. So there's a weird thing that's going to go on here. The bigger the company that you go into, the less knowledgeable the people will be that are interviewing you. And the reason for that is, generally, as you get to very big organizations, HR tends to do the interviews more and more. And what happens is that HR does the interview and they kind of pass that feedback on to developers like me, or to even more senior developers in the organization. But the thing is that HR people really don't know what they're talking about in terms of software development, and they don't really know in terms of technical skills what they shouldn't be hiring. They're HR people, and I'm really sorry if I've offended any HR people, but it's really hard for you guys to kind of get this right when you don't have any programming experience, when you don't have any technical skills. You might think that you're hiring the right person. You're hiring blind off the bat. Now, I want to make another little point of that. If you come up against someone who is an HR person, you better have a degree. And I say that with a really sinking feeling in my stomach and a really sinking heart, is if you've got no experience and you are applying for a job interview, if you're applying for a job, you go into the interview, that person has no technical experience, no understanding of, what is Hello World, any kind of things like that, and they're the person hiring you, their only thing that they're going to gauge you on is, do you have a bachelor's degree, or do you have a master's degree, or do you have a PhD? Are you in our price range if the answer is yes to any of those? And do you seem confident, motivated, and will you fit in with the team? Now, if you are lucky enough to go up and you are able to be interviewed by, say, a senior software engineer or whatever, that is going to be a completely different interview. Any self-respecting software engineer won't give two shits about your degree. What they want to know is, are you competent and capable of performing the task? And will you fit into the team? Because software engineering in a team is really about it's a real social kind of thing. But do you have the skills to kind of fit into that team? Are you going to be able to complete tasks on your own without someone watching over your back? Are your commits and check-ins going to be constantly bounced back because, they have weird code in them, or they have erroneous code, or whatever else? All those kinds of things. Now, how to actually conduct yourself in the interview, I think that's kind of the final point that I want to make here for this guy, is when you go into the interview, it's really important that you sit down, you look the guy in the eye, you introduce yourself, and you don't let him ask too many questions. You have to be the one that drives the interview. And I know that this is just a general kind of, any job interview that you go to, but believe it or not, you have to be so confident in yourself. You have to think, what are they buying from me? Like, think of it like this, right? If you go into the interview and you're basically sucking up to them, they've got all the power. What you want to do is you want to basically make them feel like they're on the back foot. They have to get you. If they don't get you, their boss is going to be angry. They've missed out on someone really important. How do you do that? My preferred method of doing that, and I know it's a lot of people's preferred method, and it can be challenging if you're not a very confident kind of person, but my preferred method is ask lots of questions. Don't just ask generic questions. Ask questions like, what do you think of the new React library? The new update brought this, are you guys using React? Oh, hang on a second, that engages him. That says, hang on, he probably knows about React. In fact, he's asking very specific questions about the versions of React. He probably knows a lot about React. Ask questions like, what do you think about the new in operator in JavaScript or whatever? Do you like that? What do you think about the new arrow functions? All that kind of stuff. And get him to kind of answer your questions. Ask questions like, do you guys use a sprint methodology, or do you, how do you work with your team? Do you guys use GitHub as your hosting for source control, or do you guys not use Git at all? Do you guys use something like TFS? I'm really interested to know. I mean, I love Git, but I'm very flexible on using anything. Those are the kinds of questions, and that's how you want to drive the interview the whole time. If you get asked to do something, and I know this is weirdly, it's not such a common practice where I live. But I know it's quite a common practice in the United States where interviewers will basically give you a take-home task, like, finish this website or whatever else. My 2 cents is F that, right? Like, if you really, really want the job, go for it. Do their stupid task. But my opinion of those kinds of things is, I don't know, they rub against me the wrong way. They kind of don't, really prove anything, especially when you ask someone to do a task in a week, you don't give any scope. That's just not how a software development team normally works. So, to sum up, do you need a degree to get into the software industry? No. Do you need a degree to basically progress really far in the software industry? No. Do you need a degree, or should you have a degree to go into academia in the software industry? 100% yes. Should you be nervous about your first interview? No. And one more point I really want to cover is interning. So, I know that I kind of mentioned it briefly before, but interning is, I'm really torn between two things. I think interning for free is really wrong, and I don't even know if you're allowed to do it where I live. I know interning for free is really popular in the United States, and it's a way of getting your foot in the door. I totally understand that. But I believe that if an intern is doing the same job that his peers are doing, I believe that he or she deserves some sort of, monetary compensation for the task that they're doing. Now, not obviously the full amount that that a working developer would get paid, because they're shadowing and they're consuming the resources of more knowledgeable and more understanding developers, and so that's obviously a cost to the business. But would I ever go and do an internship for free? I think no, I would never do an internship for free. Not that I'll ever have to do an internship for free ever, but because I've got the work experience behind me now. But if I was in that position again, where I couldn't get my foot in the door, would I ever do a free one? Probably not. I would probably just keep working on my portfolio and really trying to prove myself. And eventually, you will find an employer smart enough to employ you. And I guess the final point I want to make is, you don't want to work for a team that isn't motivated, that doesn't have the smarts to hire the right people. You don't want to be working for a team that uses an HR person to hire a network stack engineer or whatever else. You want to be working for people who are really, knowledgeable, understanding, and will support your continued knowledge development and all those kinds of things. I really hope that's answered all of the questions that have been thrown towards me today. And I hope that also gives you guys some general insight into how to get into the programming industry. This has been quite a long video, so I'm really sorry about that. Sunday will, of course, again be my Rust tutorials. I'll have 3 coming out. I've recorded 2, and I've got to record 1 more. Thanks for watching, and like, comment, subscribe, dislike, tell me how you didn't get the job interview from this video. Or if you did get a job interview from this video, please tell me, because I'd really love to know. That'd be totally awesome. But just remember, guys, this is just my experience and my 2 cents about the last couple of years that I've been working in the software industry. So yeah, thanks.